Hello and welcome to the RevOps Show. Behavioral science is a fascinating topic in general, but as it relates to revenue operations, there are things I didn't even realize until I listened to Jess and Doug in this episode. I know that's extremely vague, but if you're into behavioral science and if you're into RevOps, you're going to love this episode. There are 3 principles that our hosts cover today: certainty and possibility effects, prospect theory, and anchoring. I will let them explain what these are and give you examples right here on the RevOps Show.
Jess,
Doug,
what's going on?
this week's been a hell of a year.
Wait, someone told me you had a light week this week.
Is that what someone lied? Lied.
I heard that basically today was sun and relaxation.
Yeah, that's a way to describe it.
I heard something about bonbons and
You heard wrong. You heard wrong.
Crazy week, Jess.
Crazy week. Exciting and crazy.
Yeah, that's probably that's a fair yeah, I don't know. My brain doesn't seem to be working, Jess. I appear to be a little bit out of it all of a sudden. I guess you're going to have to carry the show today.
With the topic we have, that's going to be scary.
So when are you going to Disney next?
Oh, man. I was just talking to last night about that. We're ready to plan the next one.
So serious question.
Okay.
How excited are you for the Super Bowl halftime show on Sunday?
Not at all.
Do you know who's performing?
I don't even know who's performing. This is how bad it is.
Wow. Jess, we really have to get you out of the cave.
We do. Who's performing?
Rihanna.
Oh, is it? Okay, so I thought it might be Rihanna, but I didn't want to misspeak. I mean, okay.
What if the Backstreet Boys were doing the halftime
Oh
show?
my God. That's the dream. That's the dream right there. I would be so excited.
So Backstreet Boys at halftime of the Super Bowl for you is Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band.
Correct.
For me.
Correct. But you've already seen Bruce. Bruce has performed at the halftime show.
I know. I've seen it. Who do you think has been the best halftime performance?
I mean, so it's going to be controversial because he's controversial, but I mean, Michael Jackson. I love Michael Jackson. I thought that was a great halftime show.
I mean, I think it's clearly Justin Timberlake.
No. You're just trying to get me riled up. I walked right into that. I didn't even see where you were going with that. I walked right into it.
No, actually, I would have to say Prince.
Prince is my number. Like Prince is. I was actually going between Michael Jackson and Prince. Prince was pretty incredible.
And so I actually, the one thing I regret in my youth was I never really got into Prince. I never gave him credit for what he was. It was kind of the whole, there was a little bit of the tribal element because he was big when Bruce Springsteen was big, and it was, are you rock and roll? Are you this? And
so I feel the same way. But see, when I was coming up, it was when he was the artist, and it was just like, okay, he's just being eccentric for the sake of it. Was what I had in my head.
Correct.
I never appreciated the music because of that. And now it's incredible. Like now I love him.
Well, do you know why he did that?
No.
So I was, I kind of felt the same way. Then I learned later, man, I felt really bad afterwards. This is kind of one of the problems of the music industry. So he was not, so the record, the record studio, not the, whoever the company, the record company Rosie just gave me a big advance. Bruce Springsteen, baby, March 27th, number 47 show for me.
You got 3 more to go.
So he was not allowed to publish music under his name. The record company owned the catalog and owned Prince. And so the way he threw his middle finger at him was he became a symbol. There was the artist formerly known. And that's why he actually, apparently he sarcastically referred to it as the artist formerly known as Prince, because he wasn't allowed to call himself Prince.
I didn't realize
And then
that.
he became Prince again when he got the ownership of that bat. So it was actually, he wasn't actually being eccentric at
So
all.
this wasn't like a Kanye crazy type scenario. There's
Yeah, it
actually
wasn't
reason,
Kanye
there was
crazy,
like a
and it wasn't
reason
John
behind
Cougar
this.
became John Cougar Mellencamp became John Mellencamp. It was,
Yeah.
he was,
Okay.
although you know why John Cougar went from John Cougar. So actually he was Johnny Cougar, John Cougar, John Cougar Mellencamp, John Mellencamp.
I do not know why he became John Cougar Mellencamp though.
Well, do you know why he became John Mellencamp?
No.
Because that's his name.
Oh, okay.
His name is John Mellencamp, and his first album, they positioned him as he was going to be a teenage.
Oh, that's why they
and
did.
so he was Johnny Cougar.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Then he had his breakthrough as John Cougar. That was Jack and Diane,
Right.
etc. So then all of a sudden he became famous as John Cougar, and it drove him crazy because that wasn't who he was. So he wanted to go to John Mellencamp, but they're like, wait, no, you can't go to John Mellencamp because no one will know
Nobody
who you
knows
are.
who.
So he
yeah.
was John Cougar Mellencamp to John Mellencamp. I've seen John Mellencamp 3 times front row center.
Front row center.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep, pretty cool. So,
fun music facts.
So I'll tell you why. I mean, so I get, and I respect Michael Jackson, the performer. Prince's performance was better, and you can't.
Purple
mistake,
Rain in the Rain.
It rained during Purple Rain. Correct.
Oh, yeah. Purple Rain in the Rain. I knew that's where you were going. I mean,
Just,
the gods just delighted us all.
Now I loved Springsteen because it was just like 12 minutes of.
So I'm not a huge Springsteen fan, but Springsteen's up there for me on Super Bowl halftime performances. I'm not a huge. I mean, it was great.
So first off, the thing that people have to understand about Bruce Springsteen is what made Bruce Springsteen famous was seeing Bruce Springsteen live.
Right.
You know, his manager today is John Landau, who was a writer, and the famous line was, "I've seen the future of rock and roll, and his name is Bruce Springsteen."
Yeah.
And so, you know, Springsteen sets the high bar for a concert, and he was the first one. Prince kind of did it, but he just said, "You know what? We're not gonna make it. You know, we're not gonna have the left shark, and it's just gonna be 12 minutes of uninterrupted rock and roll concert."
Yep.
Yeah, so that's why I enjoyed it.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about Super Bowl halftime shows, right, Jess?
Yeah, we are. Okay,
yeah. So who's your
our
pick?
top 5?
Who's your pick? I'm sure this will be out after the game. So who are you picking? Do you even know who's in the game? Let's start there.
It's Kansas City and the Eagles. I know the Eagles are in because I don't like the Eagles. So I'm going to go Kansas City.
So we're both picking the Chiefs. We're both picking the Chiefs.
I mean, I have no idea if it's a good pick, but that's who I'm picking.
So do you watch the Super Bowl?
I usually do, but so this will be the first year that we don't have. So we went full off of cable this past year. So this will be the first year that we don't have, like, I'd have to have a streaming service that's showing it.
You can watch it over the air.
Well, yeah. So maybe.
Do you have an antenna on your TV?
No. No, I don't.
You're going off the grid.
Yeah.
So are you when you watch the game? Are you a watch the game or watch the commercials person?
Oh no! I'm a watch the game person. So before we had kids, if we didn't have kids, I would know absolutely who was in Super Bowl. I was a huge football fan, and then I had children, and I don't follow sports as much as I used to. So,
Jess, do you know what we're talking about today?
What are we talking about today?
So, you know, one of the 7 disciplines of strategic RevOps is behavioral science, right? And we haven't talked about it in a while. And so I thought it'd be a great idea if we had kind of a recurring element of this that in, you know, from time to time, we talk about some of the key behavioral science, behavioral principles that any RevOps person, executive or growth executive should know.
Okay.
I can't think of anything that would be more fun to talk about on the Friday before the Super Bowl than that.
Then behavioral science. Let's do it.
So which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about certainty, possibility effects.
Okay. What would you like to know, Jess?
So what is it? What is that? What is possibility effects?
And by the way, I have a feeling that today you're going to find out why I have a crush on Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman. So this is one of the principles that was popularized by and identified by Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman. By the way, if you really want to, if what we're talking about here today strikes a chord with you, if you haven't read or listened to the book Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, highly, highly recommend it. So, one of the things that I think really gets down to the core of understanding why people do what they do and why people behave the way they behave is that people are inherently lazy.
I agree. I just think it's a funny statement.
And by the way, that's actually encapsulated in the principle of the path of least resistance. Here's an interesting evolutionary fact for you, Jess. Evolutionary tidbit of trivia for you. Did you know it's the reason that we can walk and have hands is because we're inherently lazy?
The reason we can walk and have hands.
The way we can walk on two legs.
And how we
the reason we have hands is because we can walk on two legs.
Oh, I follow. Okay, gotcha.
And the reason we can walk on two legs is because we're inherently lazy. And so what happened was, in the evolution of how our brain and body manifest, is the calories that we didn't use up allowed our brain to mature and allowed other digits, and it was
wow.
Now I apply that it's we're lazy. The laziest part of humans. I mean, the reason that we can do what we do is we have basically the largest brains.
Right.
And our brains are really lazy.
Our brains are really lazy.
Our brains are really lazy. So our brains don't like to work. What likes to work is our reptilian brain, the same brain that every animal that every reptilian has.
Right.
But our, the parts of the brain that are human, like making those work takes a lot of energy. And so we don't want to make them work. Right. We want to run on autopilot. That's why we say, "Hey, Jess, how are you today?" You go, "I'm doing great, Doug. How are you?" And I go, "I'm doing awesome, Jess. How about you?" Right. It's because we're just kind of running on autopilot. Right.
Every Zoom call.
And an extension of that is we do not like to do math.
Okay.
We do not like to do math. And you know what part of math we like to do the least?
What?
Any math that exists between 0 and 1.
Ah, yes.
So
percentages and fractions.
So we do not like percentages. You know what else our brain doesn't like? As a matter of fact, our brain can't tolerate
what?
Conflict. Our brain can't tolerate conflict. Our brain can't tolerate gaps.
Okay.
You are good or you are bad. It is true or it is false. We seek certainty.
Okay.
So what the certainty and possibility effects basically say, to quote the official element, changes in the probability of gains or losses do not affect people's subjective evaluations in linear terms. So what this means is, if you go from a chance of, if I say you've got a 50% chance of winning or a 60% chance of winning, how will that influence most people's decisions?
It won't.
Right?
It won't.
Now think about this. If I were to tell you from a 50% chance of winning to a 60% chance of winning, it will have less impact on you than if I told you you went from a 90% chance of winning to a 95% chance of winning.
Is that because 95 is closer to certainty, to 100?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. It's a smaller difference.
Right.
By the way, it's a smaller difference, absolutely, 10 points to 5 points.
Yep.
Right. But if you think about it, if I go from a 50% chance of winning to a 60% chance of winning, I actually increased my chances by 20%, 10 over 50.
Right.
Whereas if I go from a 90 to a 95% chance of winning, I increased my chances of winning by 5.5%. So it's almost a 4x difference.
Right.
Right. And that's because, so if I tell you there's a 30% chance of rain, what do you think? It's not going to rain.
It's not going to rain.
right? And so if it rains with a 30% chance of rain, we say the weatherman sucks.
Yeah.
Right. And so what you're going to see through this is how it, the certainty and possibility effects flavor how people respond, react, interpret whatever's being done, which is also why, we're going to talk about choice theory, and elements of choice theory here. As we add more and more choices, we kind of break down, and all of a sudden certainty goes away. And so if you can reduce the number of choices that someone's making, if you can, provide the path, one of the reasons that point of view, like I think it's even becoming a term, a category, point of view software. One of the reasons it works is I don't have to make decisions to move forward. It's kind of like I operate on that path of certainty rather than having to think. Now, from an organization, so it's like there's one element of understanding that in terms of how you craft the environment for people to work and thrive.
Right.
But the other element that you have to understand is that to enable people to excel in how they work, you're basically operating in false environments. And that's why models are so important, right? And so, like, what's the number one thing people use on average?
Oh, okay.
If you study the stock market, I don't know where the numbers are precisely right now, but roughly speaking, on average, you're gonna, you should expect to make somewhere between 9 and 11% in stocks on an annual basis.
Mm-hmm.
Except it's like only 6% of the time has the stock market ever returned 9 to 11% in a year, right? So understanding that variance has a major effect on what's happening. So we talk with people all the time about averages, and I always like to say that the way I like to think about averages is it's the number that's always wrong, right? So averages let us feel certain. Right?
Oh yeah,
Our average cycle time is 93 days. Okay, great. So what I know is this deal will almost never be 93 days.
Right.
Right. But we focus in on that 93 days. And by the way, you ready for this? Depending upon what metric and how you go about calculating that 93 days, the certainty principle says 93 days. But what that really says is that 50% of the outcomes happen in less than 90 days.
Right.
And 50% of the outcomes happen in more than 93 days. And so, like, one of my favorites is there have been a bunch of LinkedIn HubSpot tips of we calculate our average days and then we build our automation so that the close date, so we know it's going to be 93 days. Our average cycle time is 93 days. So we auto set the deal to 93 days. And I really want to go, why do you do that? But I actually don't say that. You want to know why?
Why?
Because of certainty and possibility effects.
Because that's why they're doing it?
Because I know that's what's causing them to do that. That mixed with a couple of other behavioral principles.
I'm proud of you that you don't say that to them.
What's next, Jess? I thought this was my monologue.
Is this
show?
Well, sometimes.
It's time to get things started on the most sensational.
So is this, because we talk about deal probability, and I know you're not a huge fan of attaching probability to stage. Is this why you don't like attaching a probability to stage? Because it almost creates a layer, like I think people like it because it creates a layer of certainty on that probability, but like this seems attached to that a little bit to me.
Yeah, it's not why. It's why even if it was done the right way, I wouldn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were gonna stage weight your stages, then the way you would do that, you would do a regression analysis and you would say, if it's in stage 1, what percentage of these win? Stage 2, what percentage win? Stage 3, what percentage win? And so on. And so you would tie it to that. and then that's where, we probably get into law of averages more than it is this, but yes, the reason that everyone likes to do it is that we now build our forecast on, well, I've got X amount in stage 3, which is 40%, because it lets me turn a probability and make it feel a little bit more like a certainty. So there's some of that. The reason is that stage and deal probability have at best a loose correlation.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, a deal in stage 2 has to have a higher probability than stage 1.
Right.
On the whole.
Right.
Right. But it creates so much noise, and then you also can't learn from that. Right. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why I like and we've talked about that in previous episodes in terms of how we establish forecasting confidence.
Right.
But yeah, so there's a little bit of that.
Okay. So next I want to move to prospect theory. So what is prospect theory?
It's one of the things that enabled Kahneman and Tversky to win their Nobel Prize. It's the theory that led to their Nobel Prize in economics. Basically, it's why we there's kind of two parts to it. It's why we're loss averse. Humans are loss averse. It takes roughly 5 to 10 times the amount of winning, the joy that you get from winning. You need about 5 to 10 times to equal the pain and distress from losing. So we will do far more to avoid loss than we will to gain. There's also an element that what prospect theory really hits on is that we don't value things for their utility. If it's ours, we value it more than we would value it if it wasn't ours. So one of the experiments they ran was, and they still run these experiments, where you give people a bunch of tchotchkes, right? And so you have some, pen, and my job is, and I'm going to give you an offer. What would I pay you for that pen?
Okay.
Right. And then you're going to give me, what would you be willing to sell that pen for? Your number is almost always going to be significantly higher than my number.
Okay.
What I need to pay you for you to let go of it will be far more than, left on my own, I'd be willing to pay to get it. So we will do more to avoid losing something. It's also there's also, it kind of plugs into the omission commission bias, right? Which is, if I do this, if I decided to take a different route to work today, and I get into an accident, I'm likely to regret, why did I do that today?
Yeah.
Whereas if I got into an accident not taking a different route, them's the chances. So here's a question for you. Here's a great mathematical question for you.
Oh boy.
This is not necessarily related. This is not prospect theory, but it kind of connects a little bit to what we're talking about, and to loss avoidance and omission, commission bias, etc. And by the way, this gets into why salespeople, people connected to sales, people connected to transactions, make bad decisions in the middle of transactions. And this is also why you need to have a structure, why planning it out and building it out before. It's kind of like what I'm going to get to is, if you want to eat well this week, what's the best thing you can do?
Buy healthy food.
No, there's something better than that.
Eat healthy.
Nope, something better than that.
What?
Plan what you're going to eat on some day for every day, and then go out and buy for that. Because because in that moment where it doesn't matter, you make that decision.
Right.
So, do you remember the show Let's Make a Deal?
I do.
Right. So we've got door 1, door 2, door 3. Behind one of those doors is a pile of cash for $1 million.
Okay.
Tax free. We're covering the taxes for you. Behind another door is a goat, and then behind the other door is a chicken.
Okay.
All right. So pick door 1, door 2, door 3.
Door 2.
Okay. So I'm going to open up door 1 for you. We open up door 1, and what do we see? We see a chicken. Now I'm going to give you a choice. Do you want to stay with the door you chose, door 2, or do you want to switch to door 3? What do you do?
Stick with door 2.
Okay. Now, what's the right decision?
There is not one.
There is.
There is?
Yes.
What's the right decision?
Switch to door 3.
Why?
You will dramatically increase the likelihood of winning if you switch to door 3.
How?
Okay. What is your probability of choosing the right one? I'm sorry, let me change this. What's the probability of choosing the wrong one?
2 out of 3.
Which is, do you know what percent that is, Jess?
66.66%.
67%. You got a
67%.
67% chance of being wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
So the door you picked had a 67% chance of being wrong.
Okay.
We now have 2 doors. What's the likelihood that door 3 isn't the door?
50%.
Right. So you go from a 67 by switching doors, you go from a 67% chance of being wrong to a 50% chance of being wrong.
Okay.
So
That's not...
which would you prefer? A 67% chance of being wrong or a 50% chance of being wrong?
I would prefer a 50% chance of being wrong,
So you should switch.
But your argument is flawed.
It's not.
It is.
It's actually absolutely positively not flawed. If you run the experiment thousands of times, switching the door is distinctly the best solution. People don't switch almost 90% of the time. By the way, when they run the test, when they run an equivalent test on
this
animals,
is risk aversion.
when they run the test on animals,
animals
are much more likely, they learn to switch much faster.
Okay.
So why do we not switch?
Risk aversion. I don't want to lose what I have.
I don't want to lose and again, prospect there, I value what I have more. And here's what happens. So let's say you go, I switch. Monty, I switch to door 3.
Yeah.
Wah, 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 here's the goat. And you go, oh, God damn it. I had the $1 million.
I had it. Yeah.
Right. Whereas if I open up door 2 and you stuck with it and it's the goat, what do? Them's the breaks.
Yeah.
Right. So how many times are we looking at a situation where, we're dealing with a sales organization, a salesperson, and, they start off with a great first conversation, then things start to present themselves that aren't as positive. And we go, why aren't they adjusting? Right. So prospect theory feeds into sunk cost fallacy.
Yep.
Right. And so one of the things as you're designing systems, and this is why what we like to do is we like to design checkpoints. I want to make you make another decision.
Right.
Right. And one of the reasons for milestones and why do we have a sales development pipeline and is we don't want like, okay, hey, there you go. Boom. Guess what? Ding, ding, ding. You won. Now we're in a new, right. Think about this. How many times is the game when you watched Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? How many times did the game change as you got to each point of safety?
Right.
Okay, new game. It's almost right. You reset.
Right.
What your risk parameters are. That all comes from prospect theory.
Gotcha. So we're risk averse.
Yeah,
that's my takeaway.
But again, it's more than risk averse. It's we value what we have more. Right. So there's a bias towards we overestimate what we know. We overestimate what we have.
Right. So how does that come into play with kind of how you set your team up for working? And then, I'm also curious about how that comes into play in the sales process with prospects.
So the reason that we, I've seen exit criteria. I was going to say the reason that we set exit criteria in pipelines is, and it's actually something that's become much more common, but it's not the approach that I see dominating when there is exit criteria is very different than our exit criteria. In that most exit criteria is either and, but very limited. Like, okay, this is the check for the next stage, or very, very process. These 5 things are right. What we do with exit criteria is it's increasingly causal. It's progressing. And the reason that we do that is so that there's a clarity. So we're always going to assume we know more than we know.
Right.
Right. prospect theory is a piece of it, but also I can't see what I don't see.
Right.
So, or put another way, Jess, what you see is all there is. And so
Right.
by identifying that broader set and how we approach decision criteria, and by the way, when we look at decision criteria, there's sale process criteria, but then there's also customer decision criteria. Like, for example, is the problem big enough? That is a decision criteria that we use that unfortunately not enough of our clients adopt, right? I was actually I was having a conversation with a salesperson today, and they're stuck. The client is, or the prospect is looking at something, candidly where it stands right now. I don't think a sale is going to occur. Or if it does, they're going to have to discount to an insane level because the expectations are unreasonable. And what I said to the rep was, look, I know you understand what the size of the problem is.
Right.
Right. But either the prospect doesn't, or they're not thinking of that while they're talking about this, or they're just completely unreasonable.
Yeah.
And if they're completely unreasonable, then, almost do whatever you want to do. I can't tell you what they're going to do. I mean, I would leave. That's where I would exit. But it's more likely that they're unaware or it's not connected. And so we've got to connect to that problem. But like the first question I always ask is the problem big enough?
Right.
And by the way, not objectively is the problem big enough. And so by defining that up front, then when we do a debrief, it teaches the rep, it primes the rep to look for that. So I'm more likely to have a more realistic view. I'm more likely to look at my hand objectively, but it also sets the stage for what that review looks like. Like, so when we come in and we have that conversation, because that's already been established and it's part of the ingrained process, it leads to better outcomes. How does it play into the structure? So here's an example. It's forcing function. There's I'm a big fan of forcing functions. So we're working with a client right now. They have a pretty extensive set of rules for how long a rep can own a lead or an opportunity,
right.
and when does it become open in this, and the difficulty with that is there's always a story, there's a reason, there's confusion, it has manual elements, etc. One of the reasons why I'm a big fan of target account strategies, right? And you know this, unless we don't have strength, in which case we have no choice.
Right.
But let's say I've got 1,000 accounts that could fit our target account criteria. I am likely to make our target account program somewhere in the 500 to 750 range, right?
Yeah.
What I'm going to do is I want to force you to let go.
Right.
I want to force you. And by the way, I might say something like, let's say we're going to reset our target accounts every quarter. I might say something like 20% of your target accounts must be new, right? Because I know you're going to undervalue, right? And you're going to, no, I need to hold, no, I'm working them. Okay, that's fine.
Right.
Hey, it's great. You have 80 slots. You have 100 slots. If you want to take up one of the 100 slots with this, and remember, here's your bogey. Here's your target, right? This is what you're being, this is the number you're being held to. If you want to use one of your 100 slots, if you think one of your 100 slots, and this also brings agency back into it, right?
Right.
And so what I'm doing is I'm creating outside forces to go against that loss aversion, go against that. By the way, what loss aversion does to a rep? What's the biggest, most common mistake a rep makes? They spend too much time on an opportunity.
I was going to say they hold on to an opportunity too long. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Low deal quality, right? Why do they hold on to it? I don't want to lose it.
Yeah.
Right. What by the way, this goes back into commission omission, right? What they're not accounting for is what are you losing because you don't have that time.
Yeah.
Early when I started, Imagine 0.1, and I looked at my calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what was on my calendar? It was a big old bunch of nothing.
Right.
And the initial theory was we were gonna do coaching. I was gonna coach individuals, right? And I had opportunities where someone said, "Oh yeah, I would do it for like $250 a month," which was below what my number was. where I wanted to be. And believe it or not, I started at $500 a month. That was my initial target. I would coach somebody for $500 a month.
Right.
Time is like an airline seat.
Right.
If the 11 to 12 hour goes by with nothing, I don't get to charge for that hour ever again.
Right.
Right. So I had so that big old bunch of nothing on my calendar equaled a big old bunch of nothing on my incoming cash flow. And there was a really good argument to say, well, $250 is better than nothing. Except if I had taken the $250, suddenly my calendar would have started filling up with $250. Right. And then I wouldn't have had the time to pursue the other things. And oh, by the way, when the $1,000 opportunity came, I might not have had the time for it to quickly change what my number was from 5, right, and on and on and
right.
on. So we don't take account for what that loss is, and that's why one of my personal laws is you can't lose what you don't have.
Right.
And one of my next rules is all you have is time. Right. And so when I look at an opportunity and say, well, I don't want to lose it, I want to remind myself, if they haven't said yes, I haven't won it, so I can't lose it.
Okay. And that's where you're talking about kind of the exit criteria and it forcing.
Well,
forcing you to analyze that.
That's why I'm a fan of deal scoring.
Yep.
Right. That's why I'm a fan of force function. But again, what the motivation is it's loss aversion. It's prospect theory that causes reps to hold on to accounts and to spend too much time on an opportunity. So by the way, the other thing you have to do is a lot of education.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Next I want to talk about anchoring, which.
Oh, I love anchoring.
Well, so, I've done
all Tversky and Kahneman today, by the way, Jess.
You
chose all Tversky and Kahneman.
It is. So I did do research on this. They have heuristic, like as a category of anchoring, and maybe it's just going over my head. I actually don't connect I'm not able to connect what anchoring actually has to do with heuristic. I think I understand
anchoring is a heuristic.
It is a heuristic. Okay.
Right.
All
heuristic, it is generally true. It is not always true, but it is generally true.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
So anchoring is a priming effect.
Okay.
Right. It sets a stage. So did you know, if I said to you, did you see Moneyball jackpots up to $600 million? Let's just say let's say we're I'm going to make a presentation to you today. I'm making my proposal. Mm-hmm. And we're small talking. I go, holy cow, can you believe it? You see Moneyball is up, jackpot's up at $600 million. Let's say we just started, like, oh yeah. And then then everything else happened beyond that.
Right.
That's scenario 1.
Okay.
Scenario 2. Can you believe the score of that game last night was 6-3?
Mm-hmm.
You will pay more money for whatever I offer if we start off talking about the Moneyball jackpot than you would if the reason you heard a large number, right? And so without realizing it, so I say this will be $176,000.
Okay.
Still ringing in your head is $600 million, $160,000. Yeah, that 6-3, 100, right?
Right.
Right. Why in negotiation do you start high and go down? Right. You're anchoring high.
Yeah.
Right. Why should you not negotiate with yourself? Right. Everyone's afraid to talk about price early.
Yeah.
Why? It's your opportunity to anchor.
Yeah.
Right. Understand, you are always anchoring.
Okay.
By the way, what's happening around you is anchoring. I might have walked in and there's a sign that says 3,762. There's a sign that says 13. That's going to influence us, right? We're getting primed by a whole bunch of different things that we are often not aware of that causes us to interpret things differently.
So are you saying that if I see a number somewhere before having a conversation, like a sales conversation with you, that number that I saw can impact that conversation that I'm having with you, even though those two things are not related? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that number can have an impact.
You're saying it will.
Related. I'm saying that number will have an impact. The question is, what level of impact will it have?
Okay.
It's not brainwashing. It's not hypnosis.
Right.
Right. It's not, I will, right. But as you think about how you're crafting your presentation, you're anchoring in your presentation, you don't even realize it. Anchoring plays with framing. We'll talk about framing in another conversation, right? But it's remember, what we don't want to do is we don't want to think.
Right.
This is all built into we don't want to think. So how do we avoid thinking? Well, we avoid thinking with heuristics.
Right.
Our brains are not algorithms. We keep talking about our brain as a computer. Our brain is actually not a computer because computers are precise. Our brains are not precise. They do not want to be precise.
No.
So what do? We stereotype. We stereotype everything. That's what a heuristic is. It's a stereotype. What we do is we associate. We look for something close and similar to give us a judgment, right? There's a strong pricing theory that some people dub the Little Red Riding Hood pricing approach. Have you ever noticed the proliferation of given options in 3?
Yes.
You're always given 3 options, right? Small, medium, extra large.
Right.
Right. So did you know, if you go back a long time ago, you used to be small and large. You used to get soda small or large. You went smaller.
No, I didn't know that.
You're probably too young. You're too young.
I'm not old enough to have experienced that.
Smaller. If I remember correctly, I think, roughly 30% would buy small. I'm sorry, roughly 70% would buy small, 70 and 30% would buy large.
Yeah.
So then they said, okay, well, how can we generate more money? They introduced small, medium, large.
And everybody goes with the medium because it's
20% small, 40% medium, 30% large. Then they went small, large, extra large. 10% small. It's like 50% large, 40% extra large.
Yeah.
Right. You actually grew that number, right? Why? Well, here's what happens. So I give you a small price, medium price, large price here. Right?
Yep.
Well, the small's not quite enough. And think about this, especially because so much of what we buy today is intangible.
Right.
Right. That's too light. But that's $100. Okay. That's $100. Well, now all of a sudden the $150, well, that feels reasonable because it's more than 100. And then your other option is $450. Whoa. That's way. Well, guess what? All of a sudden that $150, that looks like a bargain compared to $400.
Right.
That's what's happening. We don't know that that's what's happening.
I'm rethinking all of my subscription services right at this moment and realizing that I've been played.
Oh yeah, I forget, Dan Ariely has a great visual of this, and it was The Economist that did this. It was like digital only this, hard copy this, hard copy and digital.
Yeah.
The problem was no one was buying hard copy.
Right.
They did hard copy and digital. All of a sudden, everything, like, they jumped their subscriptions up, not realizing, well, the digital was like, all of a sudden people jumped in, and it wasn't exactly that, but it's something very, very similar to that. Yeah, absolutely. We don't, and again, that's why this is so very much a revenue operations function, because this has absolute positive impact on the underlying operational environment. How do you become more efficient without losing resiliency? See, too often what we do is we become more and more precise or more and more restrictive to generate efficiency, right?
Yeah.
If we understand the behavioral principles, even just the 3 that we're talking about today, suddenly we can begin to still keep our flexibility, but frame the structure in a way that the natural decision is here.
Right.
The difference between opt out or opt in, right, is manifest.
Yeah.
Right. And so we can build more resiliency and increase efficiency when we understand this. And I'm sure you can see now we can also understand how it impacts what the customer experience is, what the selling experience is. By the way, you know, one of my favorite questions. One of my favorite
So what?
one of my favorite questions I was taught by Dan Sullivan. Right. And so I always ask the question, you know, let's say we're having this conversation a year from today. As a matter of fact, yesterday I said, let's pretend we're talking on December 29th, 2024. So you've had your, you know, fully implementation, et cetera, et cetera. And you know, I'm sometimes crazy like this. I make you answer the question in the past.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you want to know why that works?
Why?
Prospect theory.
'Cause
We have grown 30%. We have our entire sales team working with the CRM. We have a unified experience.
Yeah.
We have access to the data. We have.
Okay.
Right? So now, then I go, okay, so now where do we stand today? Guess what just happened? You just lost it all.
Right.
Now it hurts. I want it back. By the way, if I say to you, what do you want to be able to do? You go, well, we'll be able to, that, like, I'm going to bid on your pen. Here's the question. Do I want your bid price or your ask price? If I get you to answer in the past, you're valuing it to your ask.
Right.
If we're talking about the future, you're valuing it to your bid.
I'm really thinking through this right now because I literally experienced this exercise as a client because we went through that.
And here's the
and
thing
I remember.
what does everyone say? That's a great question.
Yeah.
People say that was really helpful. Thank you. And by the way, it was.
Yeah.
Right. Because one of the difficulties they have is they've actually never sat down and really defined what does the future state look like, right? We have this old saying, maybe you've heard of it, Jess, seek and you will find. But you know what everyone skips? If you don't know what you're seeking, you're not going to find it.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a whole lot of things that happen here. But again, if you think about the way we do things and how it's happening, like, so I asked that one question. What does everyone else do? They have their 17 question profile.
They don't go to the past. They don't make them answer it in the past. So they're not.
Well, no.
It.
I'm saying, like, if we haven't even taught them that question, like, what is the typical? They go in, they have their 17 question profile. So tell me about your existing system.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, that's really good. Guess what? We just went right into the jaws of prospect theory. So I'm now asking them to talk about what they have. Right. Right.
Yeah.
And by the way, one of the things that people have watched me, they go, you know, Doug, I surprise people because I never demo or rarely demo. Right. They're surprised by how little time I spend on their existing system. And I'm like, and my response is, I don't really understand why their existing system matters. Yeah. The question is, what is it that we're trying to, right? You see all those things happen. And so now all of a sudden I'm more in alignment with you. It's a different experience. Like, there's all of these things that are going on, and people who don't stop and understand this go, what's the difference? It's basically the same thing, right? Yeah. That's why these principles really matter. Yeah. And I don't think people think about behavioral science enough when talking about the sales process in particular. Like, the thing that's always shocked me, Jess, is at its core, sales and marketing is an influence business. Mm-hmm. Yet it is only recently and still on the fringe that behavioral science has been embraced by. Yeah. And by the way, we saw it yesterday in our own internal conversation around a topic. Well, I don't like it, right? Okay, well, so what? Well, it doesn't matter what you like. Right. All those things. Yeah, actually, we did hit behavioral science because then we got into why. Okay, I get that you don't like it. I get you don't think it looks pretty, but this is why it works. Yeah, it's great. We didn't get through everything we wanted to get through. So we'll likely have a part 2 on this. But Jess, hold on, Jess.
Yeah.
There are about 300 terms. Oh,
I know. We'll have other parts on this.
So we'll
have a series. But I think the two biggest takeaways that I have are, creating those outside forces to go against loss aversion, which we talked about, in particular for the sales rep. But I think also when you're looking at prospects and in the sales process, you got to find those opportunities with your prospects, and then you can't lose what you don't have. I mean, just thinking about that and how do you frame that? Those are kind of my biggest two takeaways from what we talked about.
Well, there you go. Go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the RevOps Show. Each principle that was shared today was fascinating to me, but I think the concept of anchoring was the one that blew me away the most. It's so crazy to me how we can almost trick the brain to think a certain way just by throwing out things like high numbers. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to go subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever it is you listen to us. Leave us a review and share the episode. If you have any questions you would like to ask Doug or Jess about the behavior science principles covered today, email me at hannah@liftenablement.com or hit us up on Twitter @demandcreator. Until next time, remember, you can't solve your upstream problems downstream.